Wow. Listen to Mr. Mob Boss.
What did you call me?
All this fucking pussyfooting around. Years now? Why don't we just get it all out there?
Tony.
Shut up.
Tony!
You got something you want to say to me?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? What do you mean? All these innuendos. You inferring to me that I didn't do everything I could to keep that kid from fucking himself up? That, yeah, knowing him and his family, that I didn't try to be a better dad to him than his own dad, God rest his soul, that I didn't try to protect Jackie Jr., that I didn't actually smack him around because I was so frustrated. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Is that what you're trying to tell me? Oh, you ever have those moments where you kind of talk back to your dad and then things get real and you get scared and you don't know what to do? Welcome to Cut to Black, a Sopranos sit-down. I'm Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
I'm Jacob Burrows, and I've seen 41 episodes of The Sopranos. And yeah, it's a nice moment where, you know how you're trying to convince someone that you took care of someone else and you're like, didn't I even smack him around on his own behalf? Didn't I help him by smacking him around? Like I'm going to smack you around and AJ, everyone in my life. Yes, Tony has got this parenting shit on lock. This is episode 2 of season 4. Who made this one?
Well, this episode is entitled No Show. It was written by David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos. It was also co-written by Terrence Winter, who is a name we've heard before. We most recently heard him tied to I just had it up. God damn it. Oh, Pine Barrens. He wrote the episode Pine Barrens. This episode was directed by John Patterson, another name we've heard. He most recently, for us, directed the finale of season 3, Army of One.
Oh, perfect. So we're going to get right into the details here. I did want to mention at first that, of course, we very much appreciate any reviews left on iTunes of our podcast. It really does help us out. We do this because it is fun. We would do it with none reviews, and like no one listening, I truly believe we would. But it is fun to see more and more people getting into it alongside with us, and your reviews really do help with that. So we have a new one here from Iana that says, "Listen to this podcast. The two lads who make this podcast are funny, insightful, and have clearly researched each week's topic in full." That's we do have Wikipedia, so that is true. And they say, "I especially like the Better Call Saul episodes because yes, we do also discuss other television shows that you can find at showswhatyouknowshow.com. But don't worry, this is the Sopranos one. We're getting right into it."
Yeah, don't worry, Sopranos people. We've sacrificed Better Call Saul for the good of Sopranos. So
that is pretty much true, yes.
Apologies to our Better Call Saul listeners. And real quick, I do want to get into, before we talk about like the specific beats of the episode, no work and no show jobs, which you kind of get a bearing of what that is by the context and by what you see on the show. But someone online did have a good kind of breakdown here. No work jobs are the guys sitting around in lawn chairs all day. They're on payroll for construction projects, and they get actual paychecks, of course, some of which they may undoubtedly kick upstairs. It's a way to milk the construction project. And then another way is the no-show job, where the guy getting the paycheck doesn't even need to physically be there. Like maybe he's a, quote, safety officer or some manager type, on paper, of course, who legally doesn't need to be on the job site at all the time. So in other words, the jobs are a form of leeching, but they're just able to skirt the law in case some inspector or auditor shows up. The guys in lawn chairs, well, they're not needed right now, but they'll be working soon. The no-show deputy assistant project manager, he's not here right now, but we can put you in touch with him. The old way of scamming construction projects would be to have a ghost employee, some guy who doesn't exist, with his paycheck going straight to a mafia bank account. But nowadays that's too prosecutable, hence the no show and no work guys. And going along with those jobs, you do get basically like medical benefits, a pension. You get that W-2 that you could show the IRS that shows where your income's coming from. I just wanted to go over that real quick because they kind of get into that quite a bit throughout this episode with the fighting over who gets the no work and the no show jobs.
That is interesting, because when that's happening, I'm like, well, there are some guys in lawn chairs, but like there's work going on all around them. So how much income is actually generated from each of these people sitting there and not doing their job? I feel like I do that at my job sometimes as well, and I get paid, so, you know.
Honestly, those guys are getting paid the same amount, if not more, than the guys doing work. Like they're in the book. Like, say it's a 60 grand a year job or something like that. They're in the books as another employee. And like the kind of description says, if an auditor shows up, it's like, who are these guys sitting down? It's like, oh, no, they're just on their break. They'll be working soon. They're not needed at the moment. But they
Yeah,
are
I was
here.
just
Good.
Yeah, you can see that they're right here. No, I was just thinking there's like 5 guys sitting there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how much money is that in the I mean, I guess yeah, it adds up, but like they're negotiating in this episode of like, okay, we're going to do 5 more jobs and then 3 of them are going to go to Paulie, and it's like, okay, 5 guys, 3 of the thing, but like is that much money if they're just doing it for is it just for one day, or I don't even know.
No, I think it's basically a career job. Like it's like
Oh,
at the very
okay.
least a year or however long, like I guess however long that project is. Like, oh, we're
Right.
building this new hotel, we're building whatever. And then Paulie can give those jobs to his crew, and then those people are going to kick. He's also getting a piece of that, and they're getting money for doing nothing. As we see in this episode, Chris gets one of the highly sought no-show jobs, where he also gets the money, but he doesn't even have to sit there from what did they say something like, why don't you try sitting here from like 11 to 3 or whatever the time they say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, great. No, I do appreciate that because it's one of these things that it's not super clear. So that's what you're listening to the podcast for, everyone. We got the
Absolutely.
background. We did our weeks of research or whatever that review said that we definitely do every time. So this episode, we start out again, I think, with a view of the FBI agent and that, just
And
to
Will
sort of
Arnett.
remind us of what's going on there with Danielle, and she opens the phone or answers the phone like Lilac Personal Shopping, which is interesting. That's clearly her undercover phone contact. So her baby daddy knows when that rings, you got to get the baby out of the room. This is interesting because I guess I really wish we could get our FBI agent friend on the show, but whatever. It's not like we know an FBI agent who can't come on the show, but because it would really be interesting at this point. Someone who worked fucking undercover, Hawaii Tom. But no, okay, no, it's fine. It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way this plays out because we see the transition. Because we see her in her normal garb with her baby and her husband, and then she goes in the bathroom, and like obviously there's a small cut as some time passes, and the phone rings, and she comes out, and she's all gussied up like a New Jersey bukyak to answer the phone when Adriana calls. Just a quick reminder on that and kind of the double life she's leading. And then we cut to Meadow just stomping around in her flip-flops, getting ready to go lay out by the pool. Hopefully there are no ducks out there. Although they're saying it's going out of season, but if she's acting like it's still summer, but maybe it is September, I guess. So technically it's a little of both. And we find out that she's been lazy bones and dropped her internship after they bought her a car. She still hasn't registered for her classes. She's trying to own Carmela with her knowledge, talking about these dead white men who are, even in their reductionism, have a thing or two to say about life and death and loss.
Maybe more than you.
Yeah.
No, it's good. This is definitely a Meadow heavy episode, and it's fun because they even bring up how she's like regressing a bit and being more like she's acting more like a teenager now than when she was 15. Like really starting a lot of fights, just lazing around by the pool. And yeah, she's probably read half the canon, those reductionist men and all of that. But yeah, obviously we figure out later that this story, like they keep bringing up how she has to register for her classes, and she's like, yeah. And we just see some new friend. What's her name? Misty.
Oh, I forget. Yeah.
Misty is her name. Yeah.
I do like that running passive aggressive thing that Meadow tries to do to Carmilla, where she tries to make her feel stupid.
Yeah.
And that's like her way of kind of trying to shut her down. Because I mean, we kind of saw it a bit when she visited her in college, and she said something like, "Oh, I wish I had time to read fiction, or read for fun or something." And then she's like, Carmilla was being like the wide-eyed tourist, like, "Look, I got a pamphlet. You can go to these things," but.
Yeah.
It's such a mean thing that she does, and she's trying to own Carmilla with it. She's not quite having it. It's not really working it. But then Furio arrives, and Carmilla's like, oh, my God, Furio's here. It's time to live out a whole relationship in my head because I'm Carmilla. That's what I always do.
Yes. And this is like, I'm so used to this at this point that I'm like, nothing shall ever come of this, so it's fine. Like, nothing will ever happen here. And, like, I'm even Carmella's never gonna leave Tony until like the last season. That's my guess right now, because they always bring her up to the edge, and then next season it's like, but the bonds, Tony, we got to get the bonds. It's like, okay, so you're not doing shit really. You are developing. I'm not saying she's not, but it's not such a dramatic change either. And like you said, oh, Furio's here now, so great. We're in this again.
And I guess even like now, I never saw Furio as a sexual being, but now that we see the way Carmella's reacting, and they even have Meadows' friend make a comment, kind of like, "Ooh, there's this guy with a ponytail," and that means sexy. He's got long hair. It's in a ponytail. He's got a cool accent. He comes in talking about how he's going to buy a house, and she mentions citizenship, and he's like, "No, you don't need that. Just buy a house. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, which is does that mean like it would actually be legally speaking bad if he was like there being a citizen for the family, or what do you think?
I think it's just kind of an offhanded joke of how like they don't need to respect any laws or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, technically, if he was a real guy wanting to buy a house, I'm pretty sure you would want to go for citizenship first if you want to own property. But he's just like, nah, I don't. Who do you think I am? I'm the driver of Tony Soprano. I do whatever I want.
Yeah, or it's like, yes, this country, you don't need any more immigrants, right? Ha ha ha. Could be that.
Very true.
So next scene opens with like a mob dinner where they're discussing Harry Potter books, and I'm like so on board, obviously.
Yeah.
Because and Bobby's like, oh, it's so popular because it gives the other 98-pound weaklings hope for the future. And then Ralphie drops a great joke about Ginny Sacks, of course. What a jokester! All his jokes are just so bang on.
Yeah, it's such a good joke that someone has to retell it later in this episode to another character, because Ginny Sack had a 98-pound mole removed from her fat ass.
But the only reason it's even a joke is that he's like playing off of what the person said in front of him to give him the credit that he is due. And then the guy retelling it forgets the setup and just says like that she's super fat, which, while true, is mean.
Yes. And then like everyone kind of filters out a bit because they need to talk about these no-show jobs. And I guess now we do know who Lil Polly is. We mentioned it in the finale of season 3, and I guess it's obviously not Polly's son. It's like, I mean, he calls him Uncle Polly, but again, as we've talked about on this show, that could mean he is his actual uncle, or they're just people that you call uncle. But he has some close relationship to Polly, obviously. Yeah. And we also get news that with Polly in the can, Christopher Moltisanti himself will be acting capo of his crew.
Well done, Christopher. You definitely deserve this. Yeah, and it is fun as well. Tony's there and he leaves, right? I mean,
yes, yep.
So we see him putting into practice this thing that he's been talking about of like, well, I wasn't even in the room. I don't know what they were talking about, even though he's the one passing things on. Now, he is passing things on at this point through Silvio, but we know he's aiming to change that to Christopher. And obviously, Silvio, I don't know what's going on with Silvio, Jim. I'm so excited and confused by all of this.
Yeah, and
Silvio's been the one guy who's never done anything. Like, he's just been there and been solid, but he doesn't like this. He doesn't like what's happening with Christopher.
And it's interesting the way they play it out through like kind of half of the episode is they're kind of pointing to Patsy as the person who, and I mean, Patsy's probably feeling the same thing. He is feeling like he was passed over. But as we learn, it's the bigger deal, and the bigger effect is going to be how it affects Silvio. And it is interesting because nobody's perfect. We've seen that Tony's very smart with a lot of his criminal moves. Even though he doesn't know what's going on with Chris and the heroine, that's just not having all the facts. But this is quite a big thing for him to overlook.
Yeah. Yeah, and he so in that actual scene, Silvio's there like, certain people may have problems with this, but like they show Patsy then, but like it's a great build up for later for what he's gonna do. But also what he does is so weird. Like what Silvio does is so weird, I think, because it doesn't really help him in any way, and except like sort of flex who he is and what he does a little bit, but it's almost like it's vindictive and yet not benefiting him as far as what he wants. But I don't know. Maybe he's the one who's feeling overlooked at this point, obviously. Yeah.
It's, I guess, kind of what he does is just the gesture to say like, hey, fucko, what about me? Without having to come out and say like, hey, you know, what about me? He just does it in a gesture. I guess actions speak louder than words. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more throughout the episode.
Yeah.
I do love the line with what I mean, and I guess hindsight's 2020. Like seeing how Silvio reacts to this line from Christopher now, knowing. Like at first I thought it was just a bad joke Christopher made when he's like, first thing I'm doing is get wings in my hair.
Yeah.
And Silvio just no sells him. And he's like, you know, like Paulie. But now it's like, oh yeah, no, it's because he's steaming. He's pissed. This is bullshit.
Yeah, because he's just like, I'll talk to you later. Gets in his car and drives off. So yes, we have Adriana hanging out with Danielle at her club, which I forgot about. Yes, she has a club. That's a thing. And, you know, they're drinking their drinks and talking the talk and opening up because Adriana shares something really personal here. And I'm sure she won't regret that.
Yes. Yeah, she does kind of come out and say, like, I just feel so close to you. And she says how she had an abortion long time ago before Christopher. And she, you know, doesn't think that she could even have kids. I mean, it's interesting because it starts out like talking about having kids, and we do know that Danielle does have a kid in real life. Yeah. And now she's explaining this, you know, deeply personal thing that no one knows about. I think she even says like your mother doesn't even know.
Yeah.
And they don't really, like most shows, you would see like a storyline like this of dealing with being the undercover person, and like maybe the relationship, the lines get blurred and maybe you do get a real personal relationship, but they don't let this character play it that way. Like even later on, it never really comes off as she feels bad on what she has to do to Adriana, which I guess I kind of like.
Yeah, I like that because I feel starting like end of last season, I thought like, oh, there's going to be 8 episodes of next season of them just hanging out and then like drama with that. But no, I mean, her cover is blown in this episode. And so I'm sort of happy that like now I don't know what's going to happen. I felt like I knew what was going to happen for 8 episodes, but clearly I didn't. But yeah, there's one of two great bait and switches in this episode where Danielle's sort of laying it on, talking about her ex. Like, I think she used to carry a gun and like this and that. And I think he was like mob connected. And then Adriana's like, can I tell you something? And she's like, of course. And there's the build up because she goes around the bar and then she tells her the actual thing. And it's like, oh, okay. So that was not what I was expecting or hoping for. But yeah, so it's still a good build up, even though, like you said, it's good that they play it that way. But you need this scene as well of them connecting in order for it to hurt later.
Yes, absolutely. And then Chris shows up with little Paulie, and he's brought some nice jewelry for Adriana because he's celebrating his, you know, it's still a promotion, even though he's just acting capo for a long time. It does show there's a lot of goodwill for Christopher, and he's definitely on the fast track. They do send Danielle away. Little Paulie's trying to hit on her. And Chris is doing drugs, I think, to celebrate, right? Of course,
yes.
That too.
Well, of course. Yeah, to celebrate. Just one last time. But know what he says, because it plays into the whole thing from last episode with Tony thinks one thing's happening and Christopher thinks another thing's happening. When Adriana asks what's up, and he's just like, let's just say Carmilla won't be first lady forever. And it's like, Christopher, you fucking moron. I mean, I guess I get it, but like, does that mean, are you going to kill Tony? Is that what you're saying? Like, what do you think is happening, really?
Yes. Yeah. Do you not understand? Yes, this is a great opportunity, but let's be smart about it. Let's not be Brendan Filone. Let's not be Bevilacqua. Let's not be Jackie Jr. here.
Yes.
But we'll see.
But, and also, like, everyone is really upset at him moving up. So it's not like he could ever take Tony out and then he'd be the new boss, even if he progressed further upwards, because the only reason he's being allowed to move up is that Tony likes him. So he can't do that. Like, he's got a path to the top. But if Tony was gone, he'd be dead immediately. He'd be the first one out.
Yeah. And I mean, I know I keep going to this of how, like, these are real life situations. Like, this exact politicking and situation could happen, you know, at a sub shop where they're selling sandwiches. And it's like, this guy's cousin, the owner's cousin. The owner makes his cousin the manager, and then the manager thinks it's because he's so good, and the dudes that have worked there for 10 years are like, "Fuck you, you piece of shit." Like, it's the same shit, but it's great because we get to see it in a nice heightened mafia setting.
Yeah, absolutely. So next scene, we have Ralphie hanging out with Janice watching a nice home movie. I guess like a murder movie. I'm not sure.
They're
And
watching
then, yep.
Faces of Death, as Tony points out. Which are
Okay,
you
but
familiar?
like,
Was that a thing? Is Sweden aware of the Faces of Death?
no, what is this?
Okay, like it was a thing growing up. It was this like VHS. Although it turns out a lot of the stuff in it's fake. Like what you hear now is that it's actually fake stuff. But I think they did have some real life riot death footage. But it's supposed to just be like a montage scenes of people dying, basically. Or like I think there's a famous scene where foreigners are eating monkey brains out of a live monkey, or there's like stupid stuff like that. And there's like a narrator.
So right.
But it's this thing. I mean, it's a known thing, before the internet. Now you could just go to wherever the fuck and watch people.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, oh, so it was the internet, but on a VHS. Okay, cool.
But yeah, Ralphie has to hide because Tony shows up, and I guess they're trying to keep this a secret, what's going on.
But the shoe, and he just knows from the shoe who it is. Tells him, I think he like, Ralphie's upstairs listening, and I thought it was gonna be something like him saying something bad about Ralphie, kick that storyline into action again, like, I'll get some conflict with Ralphie going. But no, he's just kind of like, Jesus Christ, it's fucking Janice, and just leaves basically.
Yeah, and I guess as he mentions later, obviously her last relationship with someone that's a part of their thing didn't work out too well with Richie. But I still don't quite get why Tony's so disgusted here. I guess in a way I get it, again, in relation to Richie. Or is there still this part of Tony that wants something better for Janice? Like, because I guess he was kind of fine with her being with the guy that passed out all the time because he's just a lovable religious folk.
Well, no, but despite it all, he does really not like Ralphie at all.
True.
That's at least my read on it. Like, he's annoyed in the previous episode when Carmilla's like saying that they have to come over because it's Rose's birthday, and he's like, "Ugh, fucking Ralphie at the dinner table again." And now it's like, well, now he's going out with two people that might be at dinner. I'm never gonna get rid of Ralphie. And yes, he knows Ralphie is a psychopath who just kicks women to death, and like he previously had to clean up Janice's mess when, so I do sort of get it, but then again, what do you expect from Janice? Can you not just put her on a flight, maybe get her out of there, maybe fucking finally sell that house? That house is never going to be sold, but so you're never going to get rid of her either.
Yeah, and a quick thing, we kind of glossed over it discussing the last episode. And someone had pointed this out when I was kind of reading through reactions of the premiere. It is funny that dinner is supposed to be Rosalie's birthday, and like they're having them over to cheer her up, but she doesn't get to say a word in the whole scene. And I think until Danielle shows up and she just starts talking to the one stranger and telling her about Carmilla's house. Otherwise, Ralphie's fucking controlling the scene. Everyone's kind of annoyed. They only talk about Rosalie when she's not around. So it is just an interesting thing of how, like, people want to feel for you when you're depressed and have trauma in your life, but then they quickly don't want to deal with it anymore. Like after some time's pass, it is more like, okay, get over it because I don't want your shit a part of my shit,
Yeah, and they shoot her in like profile, like from the side, and she's all isolated in her shot, and meanwhile Ralphie and Janice are together in their shot with her like leaning over him and laughing, and Rose completely expressionless. So yeah, they do a good job of like visually and obviously with the lines there communicating what's going on.
Yes. And then we see little Polly goes to see Polly in the can. And I think Paulie asks if anyone's been to see his mother. And I mean, I get that knowing Paulie, he would ask that, but why would he ever expect that someone would go see his ma?
Yeah, he even says, who has gone to see my ma? Like, not has someone. And he's like surprised that no one has. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then, like, Lil Polly's just talking about business, saying Chrissy and T made a killing in real estate, which is the thing, I guess, with, that Assemblyman guy hyped them to it. So have they already made a killing then off Junior's thing?
I guess, yeah, I guess so, because they were celebrating again. Because I mean, even though we did see Tony yelling about the money, where's the fucking money? We've seen 2 celebrations on on money in between, like since he's been yelling about it. So things are still going pretty good.
Yeah, and he
Oh,
retells the joke like, oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say it's almost like Tony's like an old lady with a honey baked ham under her arm, yelling that she has no bread. You know, if I could go back to a Sopranos reference.
no, that is a good point. He is like that, and the joke does get retold, and of course, Little Polly is not privy to the fact that he's way like up on Johnny Sacks at this point, calls him babe when he hangs up the phone. So of course he doesn't think this joke is funny. To be fair, the delivery's off, so I mean he's right. But then we move on to the whole no work job of all of them just hanging out there, and I think Christopher rolls up and gets the cash.
Yeah, Christopher rolls up. They do make a very of the time comment when he's like, he gives him the envelope. He's like, "Is all in there?" And he's like, "Did you put the spores in?" Because that's when people were sending anthrax envelopes around to people. And I think Chris is like, "Don't even joke about that," or something. Then they mention the fiber optic cable. And I will admit, Chris does give Patsy a look. I think it's very clear he gives him a look.
Yes, I also was like, oh, cool. But that I do love that because there's clearly like a look. And I would have thought that maybe he's going to make a plan of it or something. But Patsy was real like, the look, like that was enough, right? Which is great. And I will say as well, fiber optic cable. I mean, this is 2002. We got fiber optics in my neck of the wood literally last year. So, I mean, they're right. It is high-tech stuff.
Big money. And yes, the discussion of the look, very Curb Your Enthusiasm type moment that they have going on here.
Well, but in that it would have, well, it should be like someone getting murdered over a look, and then like, but you gave me the look. Like, that was just, I have a face, I don't know.
That's not a murder look, that's a beating look at the most. Yeah, one of those.
Yes. So, back to therapy. Here we are. Let's see. Yeah, so it is a Meadow-centric episode, so of course we gotta get into the details there of the job and internship and all this that she hasn't been doing. What else? Oh yeah, they get into Jackie.
Yeah, because Tony rightfully points out that Meadow is using Jackie's death in situations where she, it's not real. It's just she's using it. But Melfi makes a good point. Like, even if she's doing that, there's obviously some real pain there, some real trauma and depression. So I like this back and forth. And as you mentioned, Melfi talks about how she's regressing. And, now she's back at home and just, she's not the well put together college, Columbia strong woman. She's, the little scared teenager. But now we start talking about therapy and medication. This is quite a path to go down, Tony. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the main part of this is, let's introduce the idea of getting her talking to someone. Like, that's the main thing going on here. I don't remember if it's here that he reacts violently against the idea or not, or maybe that's later. But it is funny that when I think it's later maybe, where he brings up like, what, talk about private shit like I do with you? No one else could be doing that. And so I'm the only one who gets to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think then it goes into the next scene is just Meadow just sleeping, and she decides to, I think she asks for a sandwich or something. I think she's on the phone and Carmela walks by and she's like, "Can you get me a tuna sandwich?" And I'm like, "Oh."
Actually, I think that's later in this. Okay, there's so many scenes that are similar in this one, but yeah, she's just sleeping and it's way late. And Carmela pops in to remind her to register for the classes, the ones that she wants, so she's not going to be too late. And she just tells her that she's going to go to Europe. She decided she's going to take a year off.
Okay, all right, yeah, you're right, because they kind of go over it a few times, so I'm trying to like jumble the sequence of events. But yeah, at one point though, she does just as she walks by, she asks her to get a sandwich, and I was like, "Are you fucking serious? Now you're pushing it. God damn it."
Yes, that is true. So let's see here. Then we have Tony giving out to Christopher, yelling at him about the whole situation with the fiber optics, because it's basically drawing heat to it. Like, yeah, you're going to make a few grand off it, but that's like nothing compared to the money we're actually making off controlling this whole fucking thing, and we don't want people looking into it, so don't fuck with me on this.
Yeah, and we do have a quick check-in with Artie Bucco at the beginning of this scene, which I think is interesting because in the finale of season 3, even though throughout season 3 the divorce things start or the separation, but when Junior's singing, like he has his arms around Charmaine there, and I was like, oh, maybe things are better now. But no, he's still complaining about like paying child support, or he's fine with paying child support, but he doesn't want to give her anything. And then Tony has a line like, "Hey, you're the bartender. You're supposed to be giving me advice." But yeah, he tells Christopher all this stuff about seeing the big picture, which Christopher uses to a hilarious degree later on. In classic Sopranos / sitcom fashion, where someone learns something in one scene and tries to regurgitate it to another character, and you realize that they've picked up nothing from the initial scene, which is great.
Yes, like that happens all the time, especially with Melfi saying something and Tony trying to use it. But it's like the earlier scene has put them in a new direction, but not for the right reason. They didn't really understand what was said, but they've been propelled towards something different, and they're just going to repeat that. I'm a mofu or whatever. Like when he goes through that, like it happens all the time. But yeah, you're right. So Ralphie's playing basketball. I guess this is a scene.
Yeah, it's a weird scene because he's playing basketball with Vito, and I mean they're both old and out of shape. So like, I mean, obviously Vito's a lot larger than Ralphie, but even Ralphie's winded. But he doesn't want to let him go. Like he's like, "Come on, play defense," and he's just haphazardly kind of putting his arm up. It's the old like "let the boss win," I guess, thing is going on. Not that I feel like he could give Ralphie a run for his money otherwise in basketball, but it's
I felt like it was him being almost rebellious because he's telling him like, "Come on, work it, let's go," and he's like putting the minimal effort in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then, but they're just talking about Janice, right? They're just like, she's got big tits or something, and you know,
wouldn't be bad for my career if I made her happy and all, but yeah. So moving on, we have Carmilla just doing research online, and of course AJ comes down like, "Are you still online?" Because these were the days you can only be online one person at a time in a household.
That's what I was wondering, because I don't feel like that's the case, but maybe it was. I feel like at this point in 2002, well, excuse me, I had DSL, so I must have had. Oh, but you know, you're right. You didn't have a router, I guess. People didn't have routers then. Okay, no, all right. You schooled me. I remember now.
Yes, I did. And like they also start talking here, of course, about the whole Europe situation. And Tony concludes, there's no fucking way she's going to Europe. But then, that's...
Well, one of the best lines is, I knew all this constant harping on art was going to cause trouble because, what's in Europe? And even though, like, Carmella's being kind of sarcastic, like, what she's saying is that is really what's in Europe. It's not complete. I understand they don't want her daughter to take time off from college at this point. You need to stay the course. But it's not outrageous for a rich family to have their, 19-year-old kid get some cultural experience. I mean, maybe this is just another version of the scared American who can't leave America, especially in post 9/11 world. So maybe that's what they're getting at.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because we get into it of like Tony and where he's at, his relationship with his daughter. He talks earlier with Melfi about it. That's like, even when she was 15, she never hated me. And Carmilla brings up that, of course I'm the villain. Like, you're the dad, so you're fine. But yes, so next scene, Christopher does come home and he's complaining about Tony, complaining about him. But again, he's like, he's like, like you never heard of a learning curve. But like Tony is being nice to you. He's taking it like this is the kid gloves. You don't want to see him without the kid gloves because you're always being treated preferentially, and you just don't see it because everyone else just kind of gets nothing from Tony. And you were yelling at him last season about, oh, I loved you and I don't love you anymore, and all this shit. And now you just come home like, you know what? I'm gonna get high.
Yeah, and it's like, Chris, we've seen Tony come at you for real. Like, you know, if he moves, break his other neck. Like when he wants to go at Junior for, you know, scaring him and killing Brendan Fallone, or even like just grabbing him at the funeral where he's like, I loved you. And he's like, oh, you will respect me, like yelling in his face.
Yeah.
We've seen Tony come at him. And you're right. Like Tony he was educating him in the previous scene when at the bar. He's like, look at the big picture. We have a lot of money coming in. Don't fuck it up by stealing fiber optic cables. But Christopher wants an excuse to get high, so he's going to get high. And he's going to be a victim.
Here's the second bait and switch here, where I really thought Christopher was going to say something smart. Like the show really got me on this one because he's there like, with all your intelligence, you never see the big picture. Like this is where he does the regurgitation and, you know, ass like that, girl like that, and she doesn't like Polly, and you met her just in some store. Like, who even is she? She's a dyke. Like the greatest twist, because I thought it was really like him being smart, but like, who was I kidding?
It's because imagine, like, it really is almost like, oh my God, Chris is just known all the time. That's why he's been being smart around it. And maybe he's running his own little plan here. But no, yeah, she's a dyke. It reminds me so much of when he's with Jon Favreau and he's like, the roof is soft tar. Like, that's fucking brilliant. Yeah. Like, he thinks he's coming to this great realization, but no. He's just Christopher.
Yeah. He's Christopher. And that's going to play out great. So then we get the scene where Patsy and Lil Polly are talking to Christopher. And it is weird that Christopher is like, he's their boss now, I guess. But yeah, and Patsy's there like, you gave me the look. And then when Lil Polly speaks, like, Patsy gives him a slap. It's a pretty good build-up here of, like, Patsy feeling like he's the one left out, where I'm sure he is as well. But, like, he's also fine doing shit for Christopher when he gets a look, so he's not that down on it.
Yeah. And I like that. It makes complete sense, kind of the old switcheroo they pull on us, where we do get the impression that he's a little annoyed at Christopher being, him being passed over for Christopher, but, you know, the enemy will not truly reveal himself to be Silvio until later. But otherwise, Patsy's kind of okay with just being taking orders.
Yeah. So we get a family discussion here of the whole going to Europe thing. Like Europe's any less safe than here, Meadow says. And, it starts with Tony being all, yes, you're never going to Europe. But then we have this shot of him and the audio gets all weird. And I guess it's all getting to him. Like, why does he freak out here and say, oh, you go then? Like, what was your read on it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting choice because, well, it's kind of after she brings up Jackie, I think, because it's when she mentions, my ex-boyfriend was found face down in his own blood, and that's when he kind of zones out. But again, like, I almost want to feel like it's like he feels bad for what happened to Jackie, but I don't believe that, especially the way the season 3 finale played out and how he just kind of wanted it over and done with. But maybe there's some small regret there. But I guess it also is just, again, reflecting on his own children, because Jackie was just a kid like them. And I guess in Tony Soprano fashion, the only real way to react is to just lash out and be like, fine, do whatever the fuck, because he's not going to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, at the same time, he is kind of right in the next scene where he's talking to Carmilla and says that, like, the more we forbid it, the more she's just going to want to go. So he does have sort of a valid point, even though it seems like a reaction out of rage. It's also like, yeah, this is probably going to help things work out. And Carmilla's the one pushing for, she's got to talk to someone about this before making such a big choice. And Tony doesn't really like this idea. But of course, in the end, that's the next scene, basically.
But I do want to say, like, what you're talking about with Tony saying, the more we forbid it, the more she's going to go. It's quite a role reversal from when we had Noah last season. And that was Carmela's point of view of like, we can't keep fighting her on it because we're going to push her closer to him. But now it's like the other way around here. And it is like a smart take for Tony that he doesn't quite stick with.
I guess he learned something there for a bit, at least, because he was right. So then Meadow, like once she's there, she's opening up okay there about. She's actually talking about her thought process in the finale last season about how they were get that saccharine fucking Italian ballad. Like it's like David Chase is speaking to us again here through Meadow, and like saying how it's all sick and they didn't even care. And then, okay, so what do you think of this person here she's getting help from? Like, what's your estimation of her skills? Is she doing well?
I think yes and no. I think it's The Sopranos always handles this brilliantly, where I feel like they have a reverence for therapy and like how the good it can do, but they're not afraid to also point out the flaws and poke fun at it a bit, because it just devolves into like, I'm going to prescribe drugs, or did your dad molest you, or did mom molest you? And I mean, it's played as a goof, not to say obviously like that is a source of a lot of people's trauma, but it's fun that it just gets there. That's kind of my take on it. I think they like to show how helpful it is, but they like to show that there is quite a few bad sides to it as well.
I felt there were like three things in that direction. First off, we see Meadow on her little chair, and then we see her, like the therapist, on her chair, and she's also sitting with her legs up on the chair, like mirroring her in a way that doesn't seem natural for her at all. Or, well, she actually plays it off okay. Like it does seem like she would do that, but she's clearly just doing that because she's mirroring Meadow to sort of get sort of on the same level. And she doesn't say, oh, anything, did your dad molest you? She just says dad and mom. Like she doesn't put the in front of them, and that feels so weirdly like patronizing in a way. And she also doesn't pick up that the name is Jackie. She calls him Jack until Meadow corrects her. But at the same time, she's not doing that badly either, because she's like, it's like, and she's right, it's like everyone takes a year off. I mean, I didn't, but whatever, I probably should have. But like everyone, you'll be fine. You can even go to Barcelona. I got a contact. Doesn't really matter. You don't even know what you want to study.
And I love we see the company line again from Meadow. We saw flashes of it in the finale where she talks to Jackie Jr.'s brother about, our dads brush up against organized crime or whatever, where she parrots Tony here and says there's no such thing as the mafia. I said Jackie's dad was a loan shark or whatever. So I like that. It's like Meadow obviously still has that rebellious part of her, but it's just the thing that we all have where, we think like, I'm different than my family. I can do whatever I want. I'm not bound to anyone. But then you kind of grow into, just an adult like everyone else, and kind of play the part sometimes, even when you don't want to or think you're not going to.
And I think that's, if I do recall correctly, and this is not from Wikipedia, believe it or not. Does he say that in the episode College when they're off on their thing and finally like opening up, and he's like, "There's no such thing as the mafia," and then realizes what an absurd thing that is to say. But of course, he repeats it here because, again, you're in front of an outsider, so like, you need to keep, like, it's a psychological thing as well. You keep everything on the inside. You can't reveal too much to anyone outside.
Yes, absolutely. And again, it kind of even ties in with like, when Tony's drunk and she came home late, and he's like, you're all me. Like, you're just like me. And in a way we could see that, like, obviously she's not like a sociopath, like murderer, but we see a lot of Tony. I mean, we see it in AJ as well, but we see a lot of Tony and Meadow sometimes.
Yeah. So let's see. After this, we have, okay. So a scene here with Silvio and Tony, which we may read more into now, after the fact, because Silvio brings up that hey, it seems like Christopher's got a bit of a Napoleon thing going on, making me wonder, like, has he actually got a whiff of the thing that I mean, to be fair, Christopher is there saying like Carmilla's not going to be first lady forever, like, so he's not wrong either.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's trying to sort of move on that.
And he's absolutely doing he's not talking about Patsy,
Yeah.
He's just kind of, it's like sending a feeler out in a weird way, and Tony's not picking up on any of it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, good. And he's talking about, maybe people thought they were passed over, or Patsy thought he was passed over. Maybe there could have been other names. And I feel like we've had this discussion. Maybe it wasn't on the air. I remember you and I had a discussion about Silvio and what his role is. I remember we were kind of looking it up, because he's like the consigliere. He is kind of like Tony's right-hand man, but he's obviously has that position because he's intelligent, and he's kind of picking up what Tony's doing as he's positioning Christopher.
Yeah. So I'm just going over what he was saying there. Yeah, he says the word marginalized there about like, and Tony's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Yeah. But yes, no, we did have that discussion, and I took a screenshot of the when they're later in the FBI room, they got the chart, and I'm like, ooh, a chart. Let's see here, and they got Silvio off to the side, like there's the structure, and then Silvio's off to the side, like in the margin, like he's literally marginalized, because he's just some guy.
Nice catch. Yeah. Because he's clearly important, and Tony does go confide in Silvio for any like major decision. But we never really saw in the past if Silvio wanted to have a crew or be a captain or whatever. But I guess he does. He is picking up on his position potentially being threatened here.
And what I think is he didn't necessarily want a crew or be a captain in that, but the thing he's already doing is he's relaying Tony's orders. Tony's distancing himself, so he's becoming like, what's that Nazgul, like the mouth of Sauron or whatever,
Yeah.
he's Tony's like, he's like the hand of the king, and then Tony is literally trying to raise Christopher to that position, even though Silvio would be way better at it, obviously. But the thing about that is, as well, Tony says he's 42 years old. His idea is he's going to be 80 years old, and his son Christopher is going to run things, but like Silvio seems like he's even older than Tony, so like that's not really going to work out just in that sense, because you need a young buck in there to run things.
Yeah, someone to pass the torch to. And yeah, if Silvio is like either like the same age, because I know they kind of ran together when they were younger, or like slightly older, like you said. But yeah, then from there we have Chris hanging out with Adriana and Danielle, and then at her club. And then it turns into like he's not even being subtle in the beginning when he's like, I'll be a rapper, my bitch. And he's like grabbing them both and pulling them close, and he's tickling her. Then he starts making out with Adriana, and then he puts his hand on her. Adriana catches him. And what he starts making up, what does he say? They spook yuck. She's trying to get in the way of us. She took my hand and was rubbing it on her.
Yeah, and he says all sorts of shit, and like it's another one of these like, yeah, I guess I'll believe this. Like, it's better for me if I believe it. Like with fucking Christopher believing that cop murdered his father, I'll just go ahead and believe this because it makes everything better. And then she has to be the one to apologize, and it's like, oh, we can already see the sort of stereotypical Carmilla Tony relationship, or any mob wife and their guy relationship developing here. Because he just thinks, I mean, he has a Napoleon complex. He can just do whatever he feels like, but it doesn't really work out here, so he has to start lying.
I mean, to put it in 2018 terms, this is like gaslighting 101, my dude. He's gaslighting her like a motherfucker. Because she says, you said she has a nice ass, and it's like, yeah, because I want to say something nice about your friend, or whatever his response is. I just said something nice about it because she's a friend of yours. But it makes sense, because either way, it's like, what is Adriana gonna do? Choose, even though she does clearly hold her friendship in high regard because she told her things. But at the end of the day, Christopher's the one that gave her a club, and gave her this like super nice bracelet, which she does kind of marvel at earlier in this scene as well, and it comes back later. But what is she going to do? Like, the easiest way is to just believe Christopher and end up having to apologize for what he's doing.
Yeah, so, great stuff. I mean, for all his faults, I guess he's a good manipulator, so maybe he'll be a great mob boss one day. What do I know? So, next scene, Silvio's trying to crazy glue together a golf medal, or a trophy, I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is indicative of. I guess it's a metaphor for something, because most things are. But it could just be they wanted to start the scene up fine, in a funny way, because Patsy's like, oh, the glue got dried up there at the top.
I think not even this almost sounds like I'm goofing, but I feel like it's like, yeah, he's literally like trying to, like, his trophy is his recognition. Like, he feels like he's not getting the recognition he deserves, and it's a broken trophy. He's trying to fix it, and then he's like, fuck it, just puts it away in a shelf.
Yeah. And Patsy's there saying that, no more dipping at the job, but the order comes down from Tony. Yeah, so Silvio's still like, go ahead. And it's just because the order comes down from Tony that, like, it's still very tricky. It's like to read this, this move, but it's like you said, I guess, it's like, it's just him flexing a little bit and reminding Tony that he's also a guy. But it's also like, does it really endear you to Tony? So is it positive? I guess it's a way of reminding Tony that, hey, I'm also here.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's not so much that it's supposed to have this great positive outcome for Silvio, I guess. It's at the bare, instinct level. It's like some lions kind of fucking with each other in the wild, you know what I mean? Like, just showing like, okay, yeah, you're the dominant one, but I still have some strength here too. So don't fucking forget about me, bitch.
Yeah, I guess. Which all comes to a head later in a fun way. So yes, scene here again, dressing gown, morning, orange juice. Tony's coming down the stairs talking to Janice, she's just there because she has to use the washing machine.
Yeah, doing laundry.
So she's there saying, oh, for your information, Ralphie's a nice guy, and we're so with Tony here, I feel. But like, this is where I get why, like you mentioned earlier, why is he so disgusted? But like, he does know Ralphie, and he points this out. Do I not know him better than you? And her last boyfriend put a gun to her head just to get off, and that was Ralphie's way worse than that.
And let's not forget too that, and I'm sure Tony's somewhat aware of this, because not only who Ralphie is, but who Janice is, and it's just it's a bad recipe, because as we saw, she was egging Richie along more than anyone to kind of really make a play for Tony. So they all already have their own little qualms. So that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, similarly to how I sort of forgot, or easily forgave Junior for trying to murder Tony, I've also, like, I guess, forgotten that Janice was trying to get Tony killed, basically, like mother, like daughter. Except I don't forgive her because she's not as likable as Junior. But yeah, it's you're right. It was a terrible idea to put those two together.
Then we see Danielle again with her husband and baby. She gets a call from Adriana, who's making it clear, no, this is over. This is done for. Because she mentions 12 messages, because of course this isn't just a normal friendship. This is her job, so she's kind of laying on a little extra thick to make sure she doesn't lose her in with the Soprano crew being undercover. But it plays out a little bit different because the FBI realizes that the undercover op is a dead issue, and maybe they'll just bring in Adriana and go a different angle.
Yeah, which I never would have expected for whatever reason. But hey, I guess like we got something, so let's use it. Let's see what we can do here.
It is, as you mentioned at the start of the show, it is really nice that we don't have to sit through, like, we sat through more episodes of The Lamp before that became nothing than we did of this Danielle character, which it had more potential, at least. If it wouldn't have been terrible if they let it go for a few more episodes to try to build it, but it's refreshing and welcome that they kind of kill it quick to kind of flip it into a different story.
True. So then there's a golf scene. Tony's out golfing with Artie Bucco, who's obviously not getting the ball in the hole. Poor man. Like, he never like. Can you imagine this scene of where Artie Bucco just did a hole in one or whatever? Like, it would never happen in the universe of the show. They would develop superpowers before anything like that happened in this universe.
And then we see Mazzarone show up, who I guess is like the construction guy. And now, Tony's like, oh, no, I already talked to him about that. He's like, no, this isn't fiber optics. This is actually a truck full of floor tiles. And they also destroyed a shed or something, stealing it. It's great. We don't even need to see the scene. We just know it was a calamity of errors because they're all fuck-ups, and who cares?
Yes, very true. And so the next scene is Christopher going to the work site really upset. And this, I guess this is more the reason than anything else, for Silvio's point of view, that like he doesn't want Christopher to move up too fast. This is sort of showing partly that Christopher doesn't have control of who he's supposed to have control of, and also when he goes there, he raises up a big stink again, because he actually grabs Patsy and like throws him around, and he's gonna beat him up, and he fucking takes out a gun, like all sorts of dumb shit.
But then Patsy also shows that he's quite not ready as well, because he just hits a bystander over the head with like a crowbar.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, I know the guy said he's going to call the cops and something should be done, and maybe since tempers were flying because they just had a scuffle between them. But I don't know if he needed to crack the guy over the head with a crowbar, I think it was, or basically a metal rod.
It's an iron pipe, I think. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like he calls Christopher an idiot. Christopher grabs his gun, and it looks like Patsy's like rushing back, but he's like grabbing the iron rod at that point. So it's not like he's retreating. He's just like, "What you call me?" And yeah, Christopher gets to say, "You work for me, not fucking Silvio." And I don't think I forgot you were going through my fiance's underwear. And that wasn't him, to be fair. But yeah, it's interesting because it is like a complete reversal of that scene, which is a scant season ago.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if maybe, like obviously it couldn't be Christopher being acting Capo if Paulie was still around, but that feels like a line they had when they still thought Paulie was going to be there, but they just wanted to use it anyways. But Sopranos also does love bringing things back, but having the characters misremember it, which I guess is kind of like a more realistic way to go about it, because you're not always going to remember the specifics. Although I think I would have remembered that it was Paulie that was sniffing my girlfriend's panties.
But it's because he really hated that situation, and that guy was there, so he's going to hate him just because of that.
Very true. So yeah, then we got then it goes to Meadow in bed asking for a tuna sandwich, right? As yes. Carmela, she sees Carmela walk by.
I did want to call out one quick thing, that through that whole scene, Adriana's in the car. And could you ever imagine like Tony doing this and having Carmela in the car? Like never. He separates church and state. But obviously, Christopher gave her a club. He doesn't do that. That's why she can also later be brought up like, hey, what about all the cocaine in your building?
Yes. Yeah. Christopher is kind of not handling things too well this early in the season, especially with some of the threats that are all around him.
Yes. So yes, the tuna sandwich is requested, and basically this is where we find out that yeah, it was your idea. I only saw this lady out of goodwill, but she actually agrees with me. And then there's a huge fight just going on. Tony gets called in there and sits on a bowl of cereal or whatever, has to move that out of the way. Kind of, I guess, proving that getting her out of the house and country might not be the worst idea, you know?
Yeah, because it's like a gross old bowl. Yeah. So, and like her room's just a big mess, of course, because, she's been lazing about. But it's so funny. I mean, maybe it's just nowadays the look upon therapy or having a better understanding, but like, it just seems so obvious that the therapist was going to say, yeah, you should broaden your horizons and go to Europe. It's weird to think that they would have been a united front. Like Carmela did think it would have been someone, because she even says earlier, the reason why to do it is we need another adult who's on our side. And they just assumed that the therapist would say, don't go to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably cheaper than going to this school, right? In the U.S., can't be like, it's probably better.
That's true,
in that way. But I think when she says like, and she thinks I should go on Prozac too, it kind of gets to Tony because he's on the pills.
Mhm.
So I don't know. So yeah, but in this scene, Tony does flip flop and say, "Oh, your mother doesn't want it, so you're not going." And we get to the scene from the beginning of the episode where all this pussyfooting around, and they get into Jackie and everything, and Meadow just looks like she's gonna cry.
Yeah, I love it because Jamie Lynn Sigler plays it great, where she has all this confidence of like, I'm telling my parents off. And when she first brings it up, but when Tony steps up to her, she gets legit scared. And obviously, I don't blame her, but it is that thing of like, I mean, I don't know. I used to get in arguments with my parents, and sometimes you think you could say whatever you want, and then you get reminded, like, oh wait, no, that's my parents. Like,
Yeah.
not even saying like they're gonna beat me up or something, but they have that like authority, like it just kicks in, and then you're a little kid again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's been her thing the whole episode of like being brought back to being like a child, but it ends with her still like she doesn't give up. She goes but she goes in the most childish way possible, but still like there's nothing wrong with it in this situation, but she's like, I made my plans and I'm going to Europe, but fuck you, and like runs off.
Yeah. Well,
which is interesting.
And it feels like Tony's kind of challenging her to say that he was behind Jackie's death.
Yeah. For sure.
And
it's almost like that's more on his mind than it is on her. I don't feel that she's thinking that he's behind it, even if she may have suspected that it was because of the mob stuff. I don't think she ever thought like, yeah, Tony did it.
Yeah, but because he says like, you have something you want to say to me, and she's like you said, she does still kind of put up like some defiance, because she says, I'm tired of telling people that you're part of the Environmental Protective Agency or whatever she says, and he's like, that's not what I asked you. And then she's like, I'm going to Europe, fuck you, fuck this. So she backs down, she holds on a little bit, and then runs away. But yeah, it's such a well written, played out scene.
Yeah. So then Adriana gets confronted with the small-haired Danielle, which again, I don't remember if that's her actual name or not, Danielle.
It's Deborah. Yeah, so it's not her real name, it's Deborah.
That's harsh. So yes, we get the scene in the office. What a great scene, because for lots of reasons, but the explosive finale is not the least of them.
Yes, so like she gets the whole realization, they bring her in, they start laying out what they want her to do. They're playing a little bit smarter than, say, the Bump and Zero Big Pussy case, because they're even telling her, like, look, we don't want you to wear a wire, but we just want you to, basically, they want her to keep her eyes and ears open, because Christopher is a good in, as we've seen. He brings her to the construction site when he's pulling guns on people, and they just want to get that information. And then Diane, or wait, no, what's her name again? Deborah. Yeah, Deborah Danielle. She kind of shows her coldness, because she just says, we probably, if you did go away, go out or get arrested and get on bail, we probably just wouldn't even hear from you or Christopher again. You'll just disappear. And Adriana's go ahead.
I was gonna say, which is not true, right? I mean,
it's hard to say. I feel like that's pretty close. I guess it's 50-50. I feel like she probably, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, would they believe her, you think? Especially the way Tony is now, with like, I want everything like clean and separate. I feel like it's 50-50. They could disappear if even if it was just like, could we trust her not to say anything facing this drug bid?
Okay, I guess that part makes sense. But as far as like her, they're saying that it would happen just because you brought an FBI agent into the house, and I feel like that wasn't that, like, it's obviously bad, but like Christopher's his golden boy, and he's all got the blinders on when it comes to Christopher. So I don't think he'd like, better disappear his fiance and Christopher, because obviously 2 for 1 on this one. So I don't feel that would happen. Obviously, in this situation, I don't know what Adriana's going to do. And obviously, if she starts being an informant, then things are a bit different. But this is just saying that if she came clean and went and told Tony and Christopher, No, here's what would happen. She'd go to Christopher. Christopher would start freaking out, throwing money in a bag. We gotta go to the airport. And then he'd do heroin up his foot, and then he'd pass out in the alley. So we'd never even find out what Tony would do.
Well, because, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not as optimistic because I do feel like if she took the rap they gave her and then got released on bail, but then they put the info on the street that girl that she's been hanging out with for the last, I mean, in show terms, it's 4 months. I don't know. I feel like there'd be a sit down for sure, and it would the option would be on the table, I think. But either way,
that makes sense. I will say it would probably be good for Silvio because Christopher would be demoted quite quickly. But I don't think because fucking think about how long. He kept Jackie Jr. around. Granted, he wasn't like an FBI informant or anything, but he was kept around even though he was a fucking idiot. And we all make mistakes. The FBI, they're trying to get their way in. Now he doesn't know about the lamp, but if he knew that we had a lamp here for months, that should probably affect the thinking. But yeah, it is interesting, and there's a great ending of the scene with the explosive vomit and then the diamond bracelet all with puke all over it. It's so great.
And it's a smart angle because thinking about it on the show, I mean, outside of maybe Tony's kids and Melfi or something, Adriana, well, not innocent per se, she's one of the most innocent characters on the show. Yeah, she has an understanding of where her bar came from, and she does do drugs, and she does have an understanding what Chris is up to, but I don't feel like she's ever been active in any anything that would hurt someone else.
I think it was a good move to have her in the car for that previous scene because it's not just that she's considered a potential accomplice, it's also that she's sort of face to face with what Christopher does, which she doesn't have to be most of the time. She just sees the drugs, and hey, she doesn't even inject them. She just smokes the heroin, so there's nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, then we come to Silvio goes to see Tony. And well, how does it when he shows up? What does Silvio say, that he's been calling Tony and Tony isn't returning his calls? I'm trying to remember here.
I'll try to pull it up, but I know Silvio comes in saying oh, this floor tile business, what a misunderstanding. And it's almost again let's just say this, even though, but in this scene, it's not with Adriana and Christopher that one of them's convincing the other. They're both saying a thing that neither of them believes. And Tony's trying to get to the truth of it, saying, you've become a very strange man in your old age.
Yeah. And then I like that one of Silvio's responses is, what is this, a hangable offense? Because he does know, in the grand scheme of things, he can't make a big deal out of it, but it's a statement. And I feel like, if anything, Tony should just kind of feel stupid for not seeing this coming than anything. At least putting something in line for Silvio, seeing how he would react to what he's doing with Christopher. Yeah.
So he does come in saying, yeah, like you mentioned, are you mad at me now or what? Is this a hangable offense? And Tony says, did you deliberately disobey me? Which he definitely did.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of going through the bits there of the scenes because we've already sort of been over the motivation behind it. And Tony actually brings up, if in any way you feel like Chrissy usurped you or anything and you're trying to ream me, and Silvio just stares at him. And Tony says, that's not how it is. Silvio says, fine,
Yeah. So it's kind of like Silvio's playing this how Tony would play it. We talk about how Tony gets an apology or something and then he just walks away. So, I mean, it's a good way. Oh, yeah. Okay. But it does end where he's like, oh, yeah, floor tiles don't spend $30,000. And he gives him he kicks up the $2,000. He's like, I got 2 now. I'll get you the rest later. And he's like, yeah, I know you will. So it also is kind of a nice reminder of well, I'm still the fucking boss. So we're kind of, it's a little stare down. We'll see where this leads.
Yeah, it's really intriguing because Silvio's been, he's never been part of the scheming other than being a smart person for Tony to talk about things with. But seeing him actually do this, because I do believe he is more loyal than anyone else, including Christopher, to Tony. Like I really do think that but I have no idea how it will develop. But just given how things have gone, he's been in a great position where Paulie's been getting all nervous, he's been getting pushed up and pushed out, and Silvio's just been there, and now he's doing this. I think it's probably gonna. I don't know. I feel like now he's made his statement. Now, like, Tony knows, so he'll probably just keep doing a great job for Tony, at least for now, until something else happens that might require a change of direction.
Yeah. And then we have a quick scene for some reason, I guess, where we see Ralph cutting his toenails, and one of them flings and hits Janice in the face, and he's like, "What? You get hit with some shrapnel?" So I don't know if we're supposed to wonder, is Janice maybe second guessing this Ralph situation here, or I feel like it's just something funny that the writer, like one of the writers did this in their real life, and they're like, we need to put this in the script. This is great.
I guess it's just to show that nothing really happened from now Tony knows, and he like disapproves, and they know it, but like they're still here, they're still doing their thing. And I guess Rose just wherever, because I was like, last season I was like, that's definitely over, because of course Ralph's not going to stick around, but yeah, I guess he sticks around a little bit, half.
And coming up on before this, I guess he does mention to Silvio, when Silvio shows up to see Tony's, that they think that Meadow ran off to Europe, because basically I assume when she stormed out that that's where they thought she went. And actually, hold on, was there a storm out in this episode earlier? I think there was a debatable one.
Yeah.
Where did I...
But you mean outside of? Is it when
they're at the table?
It
wasn't in therapy, though. It was outside of therapy. Oh,
I actually thought about this.
It's when he finds Ralph's shoes.
Oh, I was thinking of when they were at the kitchen table, and he went, "Fine, go to Europe then." But then maybe, I mean, did he storm out, or did just she storm out? But yeah, you're right about the shoe, though.
I was thinking. Here's my argument here, because she's about to put like tea on or something, or coffee, and he's stepping in, and then he sees the shoes, and then he just leaves. But I guess it's not in therapy, so we can leave it off, right?
Now, but we have put in scenes where it wasn't therapy, or at least like one when he was in Italy and he stormed off from the beach. So we did put in that. But then he has left rooms in anger many a time, and that hasn't been a storm out. And
but
also,
I feel like there's precedent here, because he's he has no intention of leaving until he leaves, so that's what makes it a storm out, kind of. Let me play the scene real quick.
Okay.
I know we're almost done. I'm backtracking because I completely forgot about this.
Well, no, this is good.
Christiana Rock video. I'm coordinating with the record release.
Oh, yeah, that Tommy Motoli's one slow motherfucker, right? What's it been, about a year?
Actually, we are not going with Sony. We're considering a smaller, independent label.
Well, naturally. Got any coffee?
I may only have soy milk.
All right, he sees the shoes.
Yeah, seeing the shoe there.
What?
And he's looking at Janice. He's bending down. He's picking it up. Yep. Looking at it.
Even picks it up with like
Tony?
2 fingers. Like,
it's none of your
business.
business.
It's a cockroach.
Ralph Cifaretto, Janice.
Always fucking something with you. Why don't you stay at other people's living rooms?
Jesus Christ.
Okay, yeah, no. This is a storm out.
I think this is because, especially even going into it, he asks for the coffee. And she does preface it by saying there's only soy milk, but he's not leaving. He goes, but he's still following her for the coffee. So you know what? I think this is a fucking storm out, my dude.
I agree. Let's up the counter.
Let's get the counters out for the storm out.
Fuck you.
Yes. So, for everyone at home, we're finally at 12 stormouts. It's coming up there against the 32 deaths. So we'll see. Like we really need to grasp at straws to get some stormouts in there. But hey, I was skeptical, but then I rewatched it at home. He does storm out. So we're taking it. We're taking that one. We're counting it.
Yeah, okay, and it was Tony. It's not like we picked some other character. But then back towards the end of the episode here, Meadow, we do see that Meadow is back trying to pick up classes, but she's doing it late, so there's not a lot to choose from, but she decides to pick up a class in morality, self, and society, a philosophy class. What do you think that leads to?
Well, I thought she was flipping through and she had landed on the P's, but when she asked her, like, what about this one? And I was like, psychology. She's clearly going to study psychology to get like another avenue for the show to delve deeper into different psychology and stuff like that. But no, it's morality, self, and whatever. So, that'll be another fun way to throw even more philosophical stuff here into the show. Like, we obviously don't get enough of it. There's going to be more about death and society, and she's basically going to do what this classic thing of hearing something in class and then, like, regurgitating it like AJ does with DNA, but she's going to be doing it with philosophy, and she's going to be kind of right, but not really, and then Tony's going to repeat that to someone else. I don't think it'll lead to her like, of course, I must change my whole life and give my father up to the police. I don't think that will happen, but it's definitely a chance to delve more into that sort of thing, because it's been a lot about art with her and a lot about big words. They've just given her like this annoying like habit of using words that are just unnecessarily verbose, which I have done from time to time as well in my life. But yes, there's a specific one from, I don't remember when exactly, but when she just uses a word that's literally just she learned it that day, but she has to. So it's going to be that, but with philosophy.
I think she like says like duplicitous or something in this episode to her friend. Like she just pictures like, hello. Oh, are you even surprised he's so duplicitous? It just sounds like she's using it for no reason, just to make Carmilla feel stupid again. So yeah, things to make Carmilla feel dumb. Then the episode does end on Carmilla's in the bath. Tony comes in and we get into the, it's not you she blames, it's me. And he's like, what does that mean? And I assume what they're getting at is for not leaving Tony and basically like kind of saving her from this life, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, you're probably right on that, or it's a very good read because it just sort of ends there, right?
Yeah. So I read it as like it's like just a roundabout way of blaming Tony, but she blames Carmilla, her mother, for not protecting her properly from, this mob life, this Soprano family.
That's so interesting because I totally missed that. It's definitely a possible read, but for me it was just like a repetition of the fact that Carmilla's been like blamed for everything, and she never, Meadow, really puts anything on her father except when she sort of comes in there and calls him the big mob boss. It's almost like blaming her dad for something is too big because he is like a murderer, and that puts money on the table, and they did have conflicts about that, about the car and the black guy, like those the sorts of things. But then it's almost like on this level it's easier for her to blame her mother and just leave her father out of it, because when she does blame her father, he steps up really close to her and makes her feel like a child, and Carmilla can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the same thing too. Like it's the easier target, but also there's that, you're supposed to be her mom. You're supposed to protect her from stuff like this. And especially now with this lifestyle that's directly affected her through Jackie Jr. and kind of having to deal with losing, a family friend / ex-boyfriend, someone very close, and not just close in proximity and emotionally, but in age, and kind of a nice dose of reality of life and death and loss, compounded with the whole, America's going through a thing right now with 9/11. I'm going to bring up 9/11 quite a bit during this season, but I feel like that's because the show is as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And so that's episode 2, and I feel like a lot's happened already. I already feel excited. I feel like everything's very much tied together. It's all one solid thing, where Granted, season 3 had some extenuating circumstances, but yeah, everything feels very on track. I'm excited that we didn't have to do 8 episodes of the undercover thing. It's actually progressing to a different level now with Adriana doing something. It's like full speed ahead on the Sopranos train, and I got my tickets. I hope you have yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could send your ticket stubs to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. And of course, by ticket stubs, I mean your thoughts, your feelings, your observations, maybe something we missed, maybe something you think we nailed, maybe something you think that we completely read wrong. You can send that over to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. We'll discuss it on the podcast. And please make sure you are subscribed on iTunes or whatever podcatcher you use. And we do appreciate reviews as well.
Yes, it really helps us out. Like mentioned, we enjoy doing this just for the sake of doing it, obviously. Otherwise, why we wouldn't keep doing this? It's just a great show. If we were doing this with a shit show, then yes, we'd require even more reviews to keep going. But it is still nice. It's very nice to get. So please give us some. It would be great.
Yeah. And of course, you can find more from me at jimandthem.com. You can find more from Jacob at awesomepedia.org and also Awesomepedia on YouTube. And I think that's about it.
Well, there's one more thing, Jim.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Cut to black.